We go to Group A, where Mexico are your group winners after a 0-0 draw against Costa Rica in Las Vegas. Some good chances there for Mexico throughout the game, but Keylor Navas really had a fantastic performance, keeping a clean sheet, as Casey mentions there, for Los Ticos. Mal, I'll give you the first crack at this one on L3. What'd you think?
I kind of like it, not gonna lie. The result is not ideal.
Yeah.
The performance was much better. And I'll start from the beginning. I love the starting 11. I love how Javier Aguirre finally decided to go with Luis Chavez, Edson Alvarez, and Marcel Ruiz in the midfield. I like that midfield. It's the first time that those three play together. It showed at some point, but I think that's going to be a big factor moving forward. I think it's clear now that Raúl Jiménez is the starting number 9 for this national team, and we'll talk Santiago Jiménez, the goal he scored, and then it was disallowed by VAR. But other than that, I think this is taking taking the shape that Javier Aguirre wants for the team. Again, not ideal not to beat Costa Rica at this level, especially this Costa Rica. That's not great. They decided to go with a very physical game, and Mexico struggled with that in the beginning. But I kind of like the team. They created chances, as you said it before. Keylor Navas was just magnificent in this match.
Yeah, so maybe in the last 2 or 3 years when I watch Mexico, you find, aside from the results, very little joy in the football. And there were moments today where you were like, oh, okay, yeah. I didn't know they could still do that. I didn't know they still had that in their bag. I guess the frustration is, and this is a common theme with Mexico going back not just over the last few years, but really decades, good play has to go hand in hand with good results, with finishing, with efficiency. And Mexico did enough, it felt like, to come away with 3 points. But the finishing just wasn't there. And I'll see some of that was Keylor Navas standing on his head. But man, it's frustrating to watch this team sometimes, because even when they do make those progressive, those incisive passes, it's still not coming off. And that would be the concern for me coming out of this game.
You asked for this.
What?
You asked for this.
I did. You're right. A more pragmatic Mexico.
You wanted a more pragmatic Mexico.
Yeah, I wanted
a more pragmatic coach.
We did.
And here you have a more pragmatic coach, Sebi.
I don't want it this pragmatic. And actually today I didn't really feel like Mexico were that pragmatic. I feel like my pragmatism that I'm talking about is when you play elite competition, you need to be
clinical.
A little bit more, yes, but also more true to what you are. And if you can't, Mexico has made a history of going toe-to-toe with great teams at the World Cups, but what always? Losing in the end. Yeah. And I think some of those round of 16s might have turned into quarterfinals if there'd been more pragmatism. I think Javier Aguirre, there are moments when Mexico looks like prime Mallorca from a few years ago.
Yeah.
That's concerning, but I think in a World Cup, in a round of 16...
That's not a bad thing.
That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not great against Costa Rica.
No, I agree with you, because I see a two-striker system. I'm like, well, are you going to play like that against Argentina? Are you going to play like that against France? And no, when you're in CONCACAF, you can afford to do those things. Now, what I will say is the first 30 minutes were very bright. I saw a lot of idea. I saw a lot of creativity. I saw a lot of fluidity in the final third for the Mexican attack. And then there's a chance by Costa Rica, and it's like they buckled. It's like
the Cesar Montes flub where it kind of runs past him. Yeah.
That's the one where Malagon comes out and the ball comes across the face of goal and they get rattled. And Costa Rica sees that they're rattled and they smell the fear, and it's all over them for the next 15 minutes of that first half. And you're like, what happened to Mexico? And the moment you let a team like Costa Rica or any team feel like they're in the game, it becomes a game. And that's what Mexico needs to really get a hold of. Because if you go player per player, they've got more talent than probably a lot of teams in CONCACAF they're going to face in this competition. But when you give opportunities to teams like a Dominican Republic or a Suriname with dangerous players, and Mexico's biggest problem right now still is that physically they are second best to a lot of teams in CONCACAF. They can't keep up physically in the midfield. They don't have the legs. Edson Alvarez plays in the Premier League. He doesn't have the physicality. He doesn't have the touch on the ball. He's not living his best moment. Luis Chavez has flashes of brilliance, but since he went to Russia, and Cesar Montes as well, what happened? Where did he go? Why is he letting others come in and take his place? Marcel Ruiz has been very good for Toluca and very good at times here, but he's still finding his way, and it's very unfair to ask a player with barely 2-3 caps to be that guy. You've got to ease him in. So there are still players right now that aren't at an optimal level. You would have bet the house on Raúl Jiménez finishing off that Piojo Alvarado cross 2-3 meters away from goal, and he doesn't. So when the team isn't clicking, when the team isn't doing well, when it's not clinical in front of goal, you still have to grind out a result. And I think Mexico did that. That's their biggest saving grace. They're still finding ways to get results.
What do you think will be the reaction, Mexican media, ESPN Deportes, to not the results specifically, but like the 3 games played here? Because here's why I asked the question.
Yeah.
With the U.S., we just said it. We're not really judging the team because it's not the A team. We're judging the individuals. Here, this is the A team.
Yeah.
We kind of do have to judge them. And in that context, I think the group phase has been very disappointing. There hasn't been a moment where you've said there's been no losses, but there hasn't been a moment where you've said, ooh, this is exceptional, this is good. They struggled in the first 2 games to get those wins. They didn't win tonight. Even a team like the U.S., which is a B team, had a 5-0 against Trinidad.
So they did not
Canada
win
had
tonight.
a 6-0. Where's Mexico's 5?
Panama
Sure.
had 5. Yeah.
Absolutely. They did
5-2,
not win
right?
tonight, but the performance was way better, right? So even though they got the results against the Dominican Republic and then in the second game against Suriname, performance was subpar. But performance tonight was better. And I think it has to do with Javier Aguirre still figuring out what the best team looks like moving forward. That's the biggest question right now. Because when the tournament started, after those friendlies against Switzerland and the Turkey, we said, maybe Javier Aguirre at this point is clueless. He has now more questions than answers. I think after 3 games, maybe now he has more answers than questions. And that's a step forward. Now, they still have not played at a level that we can go and feel confident looking forward to 2026. Right. That hasn't happened yet. But the first thing that needed to happen was Javier Aguirre figuring out the best 11 for not only Gold Cup, but what's coming ahead. And I think that happened both in the game against Suriname and tonight. Now, is he going to stick around with Mateo Chavez instead of Jesus Gallardo? I don't think so. Jesus Gallardo is going to be the starter. But that midfield with Edson, Marcel, and Luis Chavez probably is going to be the one that Javier Aguirre likes the most. That front 3, Alexis Vega, Piojo Alvarado, Raúl Jiménez, that's probably as good as it gets. So the reaction is probably going to be not great, not a great game, but at least finally we know what Javier Aguirre wants from his team.